So, Duane Fouts.
Ooh.
Good morning, Duane.
Morning, sir. How are you?
I forgot the cover slide.
I don't know. We needed some kind of like massive introduction. For
I know.
That was just kind of like, hi, Duane.
I was so excited that I made him a custom slide that I forgot. Yeah. So I was up
You
till.
put the wrong email address.
Isn't this it? No.
I did? Yeah, I did, huh? So that one doesn't work anymore?
Not well. Not well.
Not well. All right. Well, if you do have a broker question, again, it's Mike W.
There you go.
All right. So, all right, I will fix that. But Duane, thanks for coming on. Appreciate you joining us today. So let's just talk. Let's just get down into it. What are the things that you're seeing, and what are the things that we, as West USA agents, or even non-West USA agents, should be aware of out there?
You know, there's the market is changing. I think it's improving over this quarter, so I'm happy to see that. But I'll tell you, along with it comes a lot of stuff that we're going to talk about today that presents a lot of opportunity for exposure to our agents and to our company. And so I know some of this is a little bit of a downer, but I think we need to know about it and talk about it.
Just so we can qualify exposure, we're talking about like risk and liability.
Risk management, yeah,
okay,
and we don't want to be on the front page of the Arizona.
Well, I don't want people thinking this is what Duane said to do.
No.
To get exposure.
No, that's not at all. So the first one I want to talk about is deed fraud, right? And you probably have seen some of this out here in the marketplace. If you're paying attention to any of the blogs that are going on and stuff, you'll see stuff on deed frauds. And Jesse Wolnick, a prominent attorney here in town, does some CE courses on deed fraud, and she ends up defending owners and sometimes realtors on dealing with this. So I can tell you that in our office, I think it was 3 of our agents involved in transactions that involved deed fraud in the last 30 days. And so it's out there, it happens, and you want to, and the reason I want to bring this up is because you want to keep your rabbit ears up. You want to understand that if somebody is contacting you to list a property, typical things are it's a free and clear piece of property, oftentimes vacant land, oftentimes the party who is reaching out to you is saying, I'm remote, I'm traveling, I can't meet with you personally, and they want to cash in on this piece of land they have allegedly owned quickly. They'll want to list it under ask, the normal market if you would do a CMA on it, and so that should raise some red flags to you. If you see those kind of things. It could come from as a referral. These folks that are perpetrators of these kind of activities, they work in concert with other folks, and you'll get a call from somebody who says, hey, I'm a realtor in Tupelo, Mississippi, and I've got a client who wants to sell this piece of vacant land, and he'll be calling you and so forth, and we'll send you a referral agreement. It's not a legitimate. None of it's legitimate. And so, it's something that if you get those kind of calls, those kind of emails from people that you don't know, that you don't haven't had any contact with them, and they're wanting to sell a piece of vacant land in particular, but it can be a residential property, oftentimes investment property where it's non-owner occupied, and it's almost always free and clear. If there's a lien on the property, it's real hard to pull this kind of a fraud off.
All right, Nick. So we get a call from a guy or a gal, and it's questionable. What do we do with that phone number?
You forewarn them, Mike.
You forewarn them. I forewarn everybody. If anybody that calls me to list a property, I forewarn them just to, the tool's there for Brock. We have a tool that's called Forewarn.
If you don't know what Forewarn is, join us at 10:30 as we do West USA orientation.
Right.
But to that same point, sometimes, they haven't been yet found in violation of something.
Okay.
Might not.
No, but it's just one layer in there. So let me ask you this question. So as a owner myself of vacant land, how do I necessarily protect myself? How do I keep tabs of this?
It's hard. It's real hard. There isn't really any good way that I know of that you can do that, except for just monitor your public records as you go.
There's a LifeLock program, and if you go, it's through Norton now, but it's I think you can even do it with certain other services. But I'm only familiar with the LifeLock one, and they'll tell you anytime that any of the properties that you own, there's been any kind of a deed or a mechanics lien or anything added.
You can do the same thing by yourself if you want to, yeah. And so I typically tell folks that that's a good way of doing it. But yeah, so if you see anything like that coming up that you have some questions about, first of all, investigate it. And by the way, these folks are good at providing, when you ask for a ID, a fraudulent ID, right? It comes from, in fact, there was one online, the guy had a picture of what looked like supposed to be him, right? Well, John Travolta was on the doggone photo of the guy.
Dude, I'd love to sell John Travolta's
right,
house.
Exactly. But anyway, so.
All right, let's jump into rent fraud. And whatever you do, if you do have a question for Duane, do not email him at db@westusa.com. We're going to change that. That's going to be Duane@westusa.com.
That'll work. Yes, absolutely. Rent fraud. This is another one that is happening. It is actually, I think, pretty tragic. But somehow these perpetrators are getting the email address of tenants. And I wanted to read you the email that they are sending to tenants that I can't see how anybody would not fall for this. And it's a real potential problem. So if you're dealing in property management, or if you're just dealing with a tenant that you've placed in a property, have a conversation with them about fraud and use the wire fraud advisory every time. Okay. And this is an email that came to a tenant that we got wind of, and obviously it's a fraud, but you'll see as I read it how it would be easy to follow through with this. It says, "Welcome to Darwin Homes. We hope that this message finds you well. Darwin Homes would like to introduce ourselves as your new property management company. Effective February 15th, 2023, Darwin Homes has assumed management of your home. Two key parts of the transaction impact you directly: paying rent and submitting maintenance requests." So there you go. Yeah. And they give you a link to set up a portal that's a fraudulent portal. And now these tenants are going to set up and get automatic drafts out of there for rent, or even pay one-time rents to this fraudulent thing. And it goes on and talks about all the stuff you would think about. It talks about how you would set the portal up, how you would do the repair requests, and what's going to happen with the security deposits. All of it fraudulent. And they use Chase Bank as their place where they say all the security deposits are going and whatnot. I mean, it's so easy for somebody to fall victim to this.
Well, it's like, I guess, especially if you're in property management. I obviously don't do property management nor really work with tenants, but when I'm working with buyers, especially when we get closer to close of escrow, I have that conversation about wiring.
Yep.
No matter what, when you get those wiring instructions from the title company, forward them to me and pick up the phone, and we're going to call the escrow officer and we're going to verify it every single time. And the same thing I would do with the tenants, say, just let them know, if you ever get a letter that we're changing property management companies, you have to call us.
You got it. Yeah, exactly. And that's why that conversation is so important. And until you're involved as an agent with one of these, you don't realize how important it really is. But man, when one of your clients calls you and say, "Hey, I think I've just been a victim of wire fraud," that's a sickening feeling when that happens. So use a wire fraud advisory, have those conversations. And we're going to talk about cybersecurity next, or cyber fraud, and that's the very same thing. I can tell you that one of our clients was a victim just recently again, $375,000 of money that was wired to a fraudulent account based on an email. It looks like we're going to be able to get most of that recovered because the victim was very quick at saying, "Whoops, I think this was a problem," and got a hold of our agent and got a hold of us, and we got a hold of their bank, and which happened to be Chase, and it looks like they're going to be able to recover most of it. But still, it's such a feeling of, oh my God, and how does that happen? And honestly, this all came from a email that was perpetrated. It looked like from the escrow company, right? And it looked like there was some question to it, and the client actually questioned the darn email, reached out to our agent, and our agent gave the correct answer. Let me find out more about it. But while they were finding out, that the doggone victim went ahead and sent the wire anyway to a, and so you can't do enough to talk to your clients and use that wire fraud advisory every time, every transaction. We don't require it as a form in our dashboard, but please use it. So.
All right, Nick. So what are some of the things that, like, when we get emails and have links and things like that, what are some of the specific things that we can do and just to kind of take steps and maybe give our clients advice to determine whether an email is legit or not?
I mean, it's the same thing we're going to do for ourselves. We're going to verify the sender is someone that we know, that the at part of the email, so Nick at West USA Realty, is there. It's not Nick at West Realty or some combination of the name. And then we're always going to verify the links that are being sent over. We're never opening any attachment ever if we don't know the sender, especially a zip file, a ZIP file. PDF documents, things like that, Word documents, all of these can be embedded with viruses, and they call them Trojan horses because they ride in on these files that look legitimate. So it's a definite conversation that you need to have with your clients when you get into the contract or when you get in an escrow, because they're going to be getting so many emails. Most lending companies are moving towards portals. So you're going to get an email when a new document has been uploaded to that portal. So no attachment will be sent directly to the client. But again, you need to make sure you're going to the website directly to sign in. So if you ever get an email from Chase or a bank or any private entity that you need to give your information to in an email, if the link is in the email, don't follow that link. Go to chase.com directly in your browser, and that's how you log in. So it's just little things like that do take time, and that's the problem. We're going so fast that we're not taking the couple of seconds to just wait, and that's what that client did. They didn't wait for their agent to get back to them after doing due diligence. They got really excited, and they wanted to keep moving forward. So even though they questioned it, even though the realtor questioned it, they wanted to get that transaction moving forward, and that's the stuff that bites us.
Yeah, I have to just say to everybody, the only rule of thumb, there is nothing you can do to totally protect and prevent yourself from receiving or for someone out there using your information truthfully against you for these purposes. So the one thing and the only thing that I know you can do is to don't do anything electronic when you receive it. Go to the basics. Go pick up the phone, dial. In fact, these guys are so good, Duane. You and I were talking about this. They had the identical number for Chase. It was one number off.
Yep.
Instead of being like 3,000, it was 3,001. So it looked like it could have been just an extension within that company even. But don't fall for it. You got to pick up the phone, talk to people directly, double check everything. Your home is your 401k. Most people in America, their home, their equity is their retirement fund. And so here's the thing. Can you just imagine working for 30, 40, 50 years, and then because of the press of a button, and some very unscrupulous people, but at the press of a button,
it's all gone.
Any amount of that is just gone,
vaporized.
This is the most scary thing right now going on electronically.
It certainly is. And that email that this client received, if you look carefully at it, you could see just those little differences in the email address that were not the right email address.
Put Bob Stevens in your head before you click a link or respond to an email. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Do a little bit of extra due diligence before you hit reply.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then also, Nick, if we do get an email and it's got some links in it, we can hover over that link and it'll show you, if you click that link, where you would be going. And oftentimes when it's just it'll seem weird.
Depending upon the browser or the email client that you're using, you should be able to put your mouse over that link, and then a little bubble window will pop up. And if that bubble window is longer than the link that's in there, or it's taking you to a website that, again, maybe it's Chase, but they misspell Chase, or there's a Chase bank .url, like there's a little things they'll do to make it look illegitimate. So again, the best way of doing it, look at the domain or the link that's in your email, go to your browser directly and type it manually into the bar. Don't click that button, because they can take you to a website that looks shot for shot like the main login, but it's taking your email, it's taking your passwords, and then they are going to go to town on your accounts as fast as they can, because that one password, I guarantee everybody, is a password for 20 different websites, because you don't have a different password for every other website that you use.
Which is what they're counting on.
100%. And they're going to get access to your stuff, and it's going to make your head spin how fast they can pull that information from you.
It's crazy. Yeah. And the other thing that I would recommend is make sure you're using double authentication on your
100%.
logins, on all of your
Everything.
logins. Yep. So that's very important.
Nobody wants to hear it on their phone, though. Nobody wants to be told you've got to have double authentication even on your cell phone. That's one of the most important places to have it. The likelihood of somebody getting onto your home computer is much less likely than somebody stealing your cell phone and having access to your home computer.
Yeah.
Well, and like I said, it's just have that discussion with your buyers. Do not wire anything until you have verbal confirmation from either myself or the title company verifying the amount and verifying the numbers. It's worth the 5 minutes of the phone call.
You just have to do it in today's world. There's just no, and I know it's a pain, but believe me, when something goes sideways, you're going to wish you did. So, and your clients are going to wish you did. Yeah. So take that time, do it the right way. So,
so we're going to talk about creative financing, and we tell our team all the time, and I've said it so many times on this podcast, is money never disappears. It just moves. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is, doesn't matter where the market is or what's happening to rates or what's happening to the market. There are always opportunities to make money. You just got to shift, and you got to see where they are moving. And for me, creative financing right now is one of the biggest opportunities. And if you can't sit down with your clients and have conversations about creative financing, you're behind in the game.
A little bit, there's no doubt. And the shift in the market has created those conversations, and it's something that we're seeing quite often here at the office in the broker level. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about it today. As you saw the interest rates today, they're up over 7% again. And there's a lot of homeowners out there that have low rates, and and there's buyers that would like to take advantage of those rates in different ways. And so, one of the ways would be to assume that underlying loan. Now, all loans are not assumable, right? And so if you're a listing agent and you're dealing with a homeowner who has an attractive rate on their underlying loan, and they want to consider the options of assumption, first of all, you got to figure out, is that loan even assumable? And if so, what are the processes to do that? You'd have to talk to the servicer of that underlying loan, find out what their process is, what their time frames are. And those are all legitimate. You can do those. FHA, VA, although there are different processes in doing those, they can both be assumed under certain conditions. And you can also find out from that servicer, is there a minimum credit score for somebody to assume that loan, and so forth. If you're on the buyer side and they're talking about wanting to assume somebody else's loan, talk to them about the realities of how they're going to come up with the cash to do that, right? Because there's going to be some cash outlay.
Because not only do you need the cash to actually get the loan, but in this market with the way people have equity, you're going to, in most cases, you're going to have cash to incentivize that seller to want to do this as well.
Of course, yeah. There's also a question is there going to be another appraisal required, right, by the servicer? Is there a opportunity to put a second mortgage behind that existing first mortgage to come up with some of the cash? These are all questions that as a listing agent you'd want to be talking to your seller about and with their servicer about. So, and you can do that if that is something that the seller wants to entertain. And by the way, if it is an assumable loan, it does make that home pretty attractive to a lot of buyers, right?
Absolutely.
And it really would open that up to a bigger pool. So It's worth having those conversations.
And I think the thing on assumptions also to remember is not assumable without qualification. It's with qualification.
Correct.
But the with qualification point subrogates your current seller. So in other words, in most instances, and I won't say all because every contract's different, but in most, the 99 something percentile, it does subrogate the client. So in other words, the seller's not responsible if the new buyer doesn't make the payments.
It depends. I mean, if you can get an ovation
from
then it's a little different story. But those are all things that you have to deal with, right?
I get ovations every day when I wrap this up. People are giving me an ovation.
Novations.
Yes.
The next ones you'll steal on the list there is wraps and subject to, those two. And they're kind of used interchangeably. And for those of you that may not be aware of a wrap, I just assume you didn't know what they were. But in essence, what they amount to, and the same similar with subject to, is that the seller will carry a over-encumbering loan that wraps the existing underlying loan into their seller financing thing. And that is something that West USA does not allow. We do not allow our agents to broker transactions that involve wraps or subject to financing. Why? Because the vast majority of loans out there are due on sale. Right? They have this due on sale clause, and which means that essentially when that home transfers ownership, that underlying loan has to be paid off. And if you violate that, that puts that seller into a position where they are essentially can have that loan called due within 30 days. And that when that happens, there's not too many people that can write a check to pay that underlying loan off, and therefore we end up with a very huge liability process. So if you're talking about wraps, and by the way, we've had agents that are pursuing all kinds of these offers out there with letters of intent and so forth to sending out saying, hey, we'll wrap your underlying loan. We like the interest rates and so forth on it. It's just something we won't broker. So if you have those kind of opportunities, reach out to one of us brokers and we'll have a conversation with you and your seller. Last one there is seller financing. Those are legitimate. Those can be done. With the Dodd-Frank Act in place, those seller financing transactions need to be handled with kid gloves, but they can be done. They are legitimate. We will allow you to broker those. With any questions you have, reach out to us as brokers. In your transaction desk, there are 3 different seller financing addendums that you can attach to an offer. If you're on the buyer's side, if that's what your buyer is asking the seller to do. Where that might come into play is if there is an underlying loan that is assumable, so you could assume that underlying loan, you could do a seller carryback for as a second mortgage for part of the equity that's there, and then the buyer could pay an additional cash for a down payment. So those things do work in specific situations, but you have to know a little bit about the seller, whether or not they do seller financing as a business or whether they do it just once ever so often. So
yeah, the Dodd-Frank Act, good point, has those criteria or additional criteria that even if, say, for instance, the seller has already done this in the last 24 months, or if they own 3 or more homes or all these other things, there are tons of conditions. It's not just like finding a seller who's willing to carry. You've got to jump through the Dodd-Frank Act.
Exactly. Yeah. And you're probably going to need an attorney involved because that attorney is going to have to drive a note and a deed of trust for that second mortgage that's going to be on there. So,
all right, specifically, Duane, real quick, what are those 3 documents in transaction desk, if you can name them? I'm just curious. I'm not.
Yeah, well, they all start with seller financing. One is seller financing, I think, 1 transaction in the last 12 months. And the second one is seller financing more than one seller finance transaction in the last 12 months. And the other one is for non-residential, which is basically vacant land and investment property where the owner will not be occupying the property. So,
all right, Todd, I think this is a class you should put together. I think we could sell this one out. This is one of the number 1 questions I'm getting from agents. And we're, on our end, we're pursuing some different documents and some things that we're working with our attorneys on. because I think, again, right now, this is an opportunity, and this is where the money's moving right now.
Yeah.
Correct.
And you're not alone. I mean, there's
Yep.
43,000 realtors in our marketplace, and they're all, not say all of them, but a lot of them are looking at these creative options. So if you're a listing agent, be aware of it and be ready for it when it comes at your
Yeah, that's a good point. As a listing agent, you better know this stuff as well, because
right.
you're obviously and in that situation, I know the broker. I could be a broker. Hey, every broker question I get, we could just say, well, talk to a real estate attorney, right? That's that's a stat. But I'm telling you, if I'm representing a seller and I get a seller financing anything, your seller needs to talk to an attorney. You have got to remove that responsibility off your plate.
Pretty much every single one of these except for number one.
Yeah.
All right, Duane, appreciate your time.
You're welcome,
Awesome.
sir.
All
You
right,
bet.
so in honor of Women's History Month, we have chosen Dolly Parton to quote, "If you don't like the road you're walking, start paving another one." Appreciate everybody joining us today, and go out and sell a home.